Hello and welcome to Wednesday Interlude, in which I present the first episode in the Norman and Plantagenet Series. This is an introductory episode in which I discuss the forebears of William the Conqueror and the establishment of Normandy. Every English schoolchild is taught the importance of the year 1066 in English history. It is the year in which William I, the Duke of Normandy, invaded England and conquered Harold Godwinson, who had been nominated by Edward the Confessor to succeed him as the English king, in spite of the fact that Edward had promised the English throne to William and that Harold Godwinson had sworn an oath to support his claim. William thus became the founder of the Norman dynasty in England. William the Conqueror did not spring up out of a vacuum and arbitrarily decide to invade and conquer England. There were specific and reasonable circumstances that motivated him to do so. First of all, let us examine where and from whom he sprang. To do this, I have prepared a simplified genealogy and a timeline, and I will be using this method throughout the series. The visual presentation will make clear who I am discussing and when the action was taking place. So look at the following screen. This is the genealogy of William the Bastard, later known as William I of England and also as William the Conqueror. Rollo was a Viking leader and the founder and first Duke of Normandy. To understand the flow and subsequent history of the relationship between England and France during the Plantagenet era, it is important to understand the role that Normandy played in the development of that relationship. Rollo was the outstanding personality among the Norsemen who invaded northern France and secured a permanent foothold on Frankish soil in the valley of the Lower Seine. This is a replica of a Viking longship that Rollo would have used for his invasion of northern France. And this is what Rollo would have looked like in his warlike capacity. After the siege of Chartres in 911, Charles the Simple, the King of West Francia, ceded them lands between the mouth of the Seine and what is now Rouen in exchange for Rollo agreeing to end his brigandage and provide the Franks with protection against future Viking raids. Here is a map showing the location of Normandy in northern France. Rollo is first recorded as the leader of these Viking settlers in a charter of 918, and he continued to reign over the region of Normandy until at least 928. He was succeeded by his son William Longsword. The offspring of Rollo and his followers became known as the Normans. Normandy's name comes from the settlement of the territory by mainly Danish and Norwegian Vikings, Northmen, from the 9th century and confirmed by treaty in the 10th century between King Charles III of France and the Viking Jarl Rollo. For a century and a half following the Norman conquest of England in 1066, Normandy and England were linked by Norman and Frankish rulers. After the Norman conquest of England and over the following 2 centuries, their descendants came to rule Norman England, the House of Normandy, leaving behind an enduring legacy in the history of Europe. For the purposes of this introduction, I'm going to pass over William Longsword, Richard the Fearless, and Richard II. Richard II had 2 sons, the first of whom, as you can see from this genealogy, became the Duke of Normandy as Richard III. The second and younger son, known as Robert the Magnificent or Robert the Devil, depending on your point of view, was, according to Jean Plaidy, instrumental in causing his brother to be poisoned so he could assume the title. It is at least certain that he wrested the castle of Falaise from his brother Richard and assumed the lordship of Falaise. When Richard sought to recover the castle from him and was unable to do so, they reached an agreement. Shortly thereafter, Richard died and Robert became the Duke of Normandy. You'll see from this genealogy that I have substituted Robert in place of Richard III, so you can see the clear line of succession from Rollo to William the Bastard. Robert had a mistress by whom he had William, who was thereafter known as William the Bastard. Robert had married the sister of King Canute of England, but the union was childless. When Robert decided to go on holy pilgrimage in order to expiate his guilt, presumably for having killed his brother and having usurped the dukedom, he appointed his 5-year-old illegitimate son as his heir and persuaded the barons to swear loyalty to him. Going on pilgrimage to the Holy Land was a perilous undertaking during the Middle Ages, and Robert died while returning from his pilgrimage, leaving his 7-year-old son to assume the title. It was not until William was 18 years old, however, that he was able to rule in his own name. This next screen shows the timeline from Rollo to William. Rollo ruled from 918 to 927. William Longsword from 927 to 942, Richard I from 942 to 996, Richard II from 996 to 1026, Richard III from 1026 to 1027, and Robert I, the father of William, from 1027 to 1035. As a child, William became acquainted with two of his cousins, who were in exile from England in France. They were Edward and Alfred. They were the sons of Emma, William's aunt, who had married Ethelred the Unready, the King of England. When Ethelred died, she married Canute, who was now King of all England, and it was agreed between them that Harold Harefoot, Canute's son, and Edward and Alfred, her sons, should be excluded from the succession in favour of their mutual son, Hardy Canute. Thus the scene was set for a power struggle, and in fact Harold Harefoot did succeed to the throne, but only for 4.5 years when he died. And Hardy Canute took over and ruled for just over 2 years, until Edward, William's cousin, and with William's help, restored Saxon rule and reigned for over 23 years. Edward promised William that he would succeed him as King of England, so when Harold Godwinson seized the throne on the death of Edward, William invaded England to claim his rightful inheritance. The date was the 14th of October 1066. The place was Hastings, and William was victorious, and he was crowned King of England on Christmas Day, the 25th of December 1066, thus establishing Norman rule in England. In the next episode, I will discuss the exciting events that led to the reasons for the crowning of William's third son as his successor.